Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon and welcome to this panel discussion on ocean observations, information and advisory services for a sustainable and resilient blue economy. I'm Srinivasa Kumar, Director of the Indian National Centre for Ocean Information Services of the Ministry of Earth Sciences. And welcome to the wonderful panel that we have here today. So we actually know that, ocean observations, ocean data, information and advisory services, they play a key role for all that we speak about blue economy. You talk about any sector, fisheries, you talk about shipping, ports and harbor, logistics, ocean energy, everything has to do with data. And then this data is available from ocean observations, and then the entire value chain that we can build from the observations to the services, be it operational services or actually policy kind of decisions that we need to do using this data. So this event here today will facilitate excellent presentations from wonderful speakers that we have today. We have with us Professor Martin Visbeck. He's professor in GEOMAR, Helmholtz-Centre for Ocean Research, Kiel. We have Karina von Schuckmann. Welcome, Karina. She's from Mercator Ocean International. We have Professor Nadia Pinardi from University of Bologna. Welcome, Nadia. And we have Professor Jose Guerreiro, President of IPMA in Portugal. Welcome, Professor Jose. And then, unfortunately, we don't have Dr. Ravichandran here today, who is the Secretary of Ministry of Earth Sciences, but we have Dr. Abhishek Chatterjee, who is a scientist from the Ministry of Earth Sciences in COIS. So welcome all of you once again. Welcome to everybody. We'll have others joining pretty soon. I'd like to call upon Professor Martin Visbeck. So we'll have about 5 presentations, about 9 to 10 minutes each, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for the discussions in the end. Welcome, Martin.
So Kumar, thank you very much. And colleagues, it's a great pleasure to be here in the Ocean Pavilion at COP. It's actually my first session here in the Ocean Pavilion at COP today, so I'm quite excited about that. I have maybe 1 or 2 more coming over the next few days. And I'd like to invite you to discuss with you a little bit about a new opportunity that we can use to set in value ocean observations, ocean simulations, to something that we call a digital twin of the ocean. So remind you, colleagues, I find it exciting to live in a time where we have more and more ocean observation. We just had a session here in this very panel about ocean observing, and there's obviously more to do, but we're already learning something about the ocean in real time from in situ system, from space, from the sciences, but also other actors. So it's really exciting space on the one hand. At the same time, over the last 30 years, Nadia has been very much involved in that. We have more capable ocean models, that we can simulate the ocean to a level that they look pretty good. When I started as a young scientist, you look at an ocean model, it was terribly wrong. You could go out with a ship and you couldn't find anything that the model has. I've been through my career discovering phenomena in an ocean model that you actually verify in the ocean. So that shows you a little bit how far we've come in the field. That's not to say that ocean models are perfect. I'm not saying that, but we're getting better at all of this. So that allows us to take it to the next level. That is, we can now take the ocean and put it on the computer. And we call this digital twin. That's not my name. That name comes from engineering. Since about 30 years, digital twinning is standard practice in engineering. They say it started with the Apollo program. When the lunar lander, they had a digital twin of that, because when they told the astronauts flip the switch, which wasn't in the plan, they didn't want them to try it out on the moon. They tried it out on the computer first and see whether it did what it wanted it to do. There's standard practice to building cars, planes, but also to run things like train systems, harbor system, and so on. So what digital twins do, they take the data from the system, they have an ability to simulate the dynamics, and they can answer what-if questions, optimization questions. So and this is what we're doing now in the ocean. So we're taking that same model and bringing it to the ocean. Science and engineering develop them, governments, private sector, civil society use them in many different and exciting ways. So I think it's really exciting times that we can even imagine simulating the ocean good enough so that we can test some hypothesis about it. Is this new? No. We're at the COP, Conference of the Party for Climate, and the prototype digital twin in the climate arena is an Earth system model. What is the what-if question? What will the temperature of the planet look like if we put a certain amount of CO2 in the atmosphere? It's not a forecast because we don't know how much CO2 will be in the atmosphere. It's a scenario. And if you want to optimize the outcome, meaning keeping the temperatures, let's say, below 1.5, this what-if system tells you how much CO2 you can put into the atmosphere before you cross the threshold. Very typical optimization, engineering, twinning approach. Another one is about adaptation to sea level rise. If you live in a coastal city, like here in Dubai, sea level is rising. The question is, what do you do? Do you put dams out there? Do you do a nature-based solution like protecting the coral reefs against waves, mangrove forest, seagrasses, or do you retreat? So there's many options in each part of the world, and digital twins can help you to take the global sea level forecast down to the local level, and then you think about how your intervention, can it do the job? So is it effective? Is it affordable? Is it socially acceptable? And what are the side effects of that? All of these things you want to play out on the computer before you try it out in the harbor. So there's digital twins around wind capture system in my country. That's extremely exciting. We're building a lot of wind capture system in the ocean. The question is, how densely can you pack them? What's the side effects, co-benefits? Again, you don't want to try it out and fail in the open system. You simulate it on the computer first in the design mode. So digital twins are ubiquitous on land, and they're becoming more important in our ocean space, I think. But remember, no digital twin without an observing system. Karina, your session that you were on just before made that very clear, that ocean observations need to be there, reliable, all the time, if twin technology wants to be successful. No twin without a model system. So in particular in the coastal arena, where Nadia will go into it, that's where the actions happen for humans. You need good models for that. So twins rely on that. None of this works without a proper data system, because you want to democratize the data. They need to be interoperable. They have to be standardized. So, and they call them data lakes, the twinning community. Ram, I wish they would call them data oceans. You know, naive as I was, I said, can we call it data ocean? They said, no, it's called data lake, right? Well, okay. It's a data lake, but it's the same things. And I think what's going to be more interesting, how we can trust the data. I mean, how we can make sure that they're not flooded with fake data. Because if it becomes commercially interesting, who knows, right? There could be bad actors out there. Interesting challenge for all of us, and Otis and friends are doing a lot of work. So finally, digital twin technology allows you also to visualize. So at GEOMAR, we run a mini planetarium, 120 degrees, about the size of this auditorium, and I'm calling it decision-making theater. So you're sitting inside, you're visualizing the outcome of a digital twin, you make a decision. This twin is a seabed. It's a photographic image of a seabed. The decision-making in this case are scientists who are deciding on the next expedition to optimize its survey plan, right? So it's a typical twin application. If you did the survey like this or like that, how can we maximize the scientific output from a limited amount of ship times? And we can imagine you can do the same for sea level, for optimizing fisheries, sea protection, things like that. So we're socializing this around the world with a decade program, this UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development called DITTO. We're at the first summit last year in London. It was very exciting. The UK invited us to do that. And Nadia and I have been just a month ago in Xiamen, China. 400 people were there, 100 non-Chinese, a lot of early careers, enormous amount of excitement in the space. And what we saw, what the Chinese have already running, amazing, right? So it's quite popular. There's some governance around the DITTO program. If you want to be involved, happy to. So I'm going to stop right here and say there's a couple of working groups that we're supporting, but we have a whole session on digital twins tomorrow. I don't want to bore you with that. But I think I want to just come back to the point that you raised. Digital twins are one of the ways to set ocean observations into value, to make them attractive for decision making, and to make it clear that without a sustainable and reliable observing system, you cannot do any of these, right? But if people want these, and I can tell you many people want these, they will have to subscribe to sustained ocean observing, and I think that's an exciting space. Thanks a lot for listening. If you like it, there's a website you can go to. I'm going to stop right here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martin. Great presentation on the digital oceans and the observations and the entire value chain. So we'll get back. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions from the audience at the end. But then I'd now like to invite Dr. Karina. Over to you, Karina, for your presentation.
Thank you very much. So I'm gonna go over then to the aspect of ocean modeling and forecasting system and support of sustainable development. And so I would like to start with a major figure, the figure where you are all convinced about, that is the central role of the ocean, in not only in the Earth system, but also for sustainable development. Here it is demonstrated in a way where you would have the 3 pillars of sustainable development: the environment, the society, and the economy, and leveraging around the different services and the different critical roles of the ocean with respect to the different pillars of the ocean. And so today we have the opportunity to take action to protect the ocean and also to improve the delivery of ocean information, ocean digital information, with end-to-end products developed specifically to inform the ocean stewardship and policy and ocean governance. So, as we have heard, and also the session before, ocean observations are essential and are key. So that's the first point. But there are also a need to integrate those observations. And as I stated also before, the more observations you have, the better are the models and also the forecasting systems in support of sustainable development. So again, there are the observations, there are our knowledge tools from the modeling and combined into reanalysis systems, which build then the baseline for forecasting systems. And so operationally has significantly improved its capacity to propose a full field of multivariable and also 3D, and if we add time, 4D responsible services for the users and different applications for users with the various aspects of observations, observation from remote sensing, in situ observations, and combining with the modeling for a various rate of user applications and a long history in terms of international collaboration, now going up, for example, with the recent Ocean Predict community. So operational oceanography offers an easy access to a grand amount of data. So this is a visualization and with a focus on the Indian Ocean here. And this is an example from the Mercator Ocean International reanalysis system on the 12th degree. Then operational oceanography is based on internationally agreed standards and further evolves its capacities. So example here are the standards with respect, for example, data validation and product validation, and also examples of further progress in terms of increasing the resolution of the systems and also starting to work on the regionalization and downscaling aspects of the different products to increase our capacities in the terms of service provision, not only for adaptation, early warning system, and preparation of increase extremes and loss and damage aspects, etc. So, as I mentioned, so these operational systems are essential for a wide range of application areas. So this is a major value, and it comes from the users. Services like, for example, the Copernicus Marine Service and also IQUIS are driven by users. There's a huge user uptake, which in turn informs us on the different use, but also informs us on the further evolution of the services with respect to what the users need. So here's an example of this user uptake, for example, for India, where we have for example, subscribers in different blue markets, such as marine conservation, biodiversity, climate and adaptation, extreme hazards and safety, and also for ocean health aspects. And with the top products for this year on the physics and reanalysis, on the forecasts, and on the sea level products. So, where do we need to go further? What are the future perspectives? What do we need? Which gaps do we have to fill? So there is a huge ongoing discussion within the ocean prediction community, which is gathered under the UN Decade for Ocean Science. So this is the so-called Decadal Center for Ocean Prediction, with the objective to answer the question how we can better contribute to build and feed appropriate governance. So what is existing today? So what we have today is that we have a lot of sophisticated and very good working forecasting systems around the world in the different centers, but they're partially disconnected amongst each others. And also there's a poor representative in the global south part. And so there had been this vision, and it's called here presented like the DCC vessel, so it's a dedicated center, DCC, for ocean prediction, with a captain, which is the UN Ocean Decade, with the Decade actions and the digital twin ocean, as we heard from Martin. The crew with the Ocean Prediction DCC community around the world, and with a navigator, the Ocean Prediction Center itself. And what is the vision with this initiative? The vision is to go through a connected community of ocean predictors around the world and different services with many robust systems everywhere and shared capacities and common standards. So I just want to take the opportunity in the end to present the activities of Mercator Ocean International, which is hosting this decadal center, so with the message of connecting the different prediction systems and the infrastructure and to work together with this network, so everybody is working to get this done. And with the infrastructure of high-powered computing and with EU assessment and digital tools, so like the EDITO infrastructure, Wikio, and European Digital Twin Ocean. Then the state-of-the-art ocean data knowledge, evolving science, particularly also as part of the Copernicus Marine Service, which is led by Mercator Ocean as well, and ocean diplomacy and UN investments in ocean observations. So this is my final message, that during the One Ocean Summit, which took place in February 22, Mercator Ocean, 6 states, so it's France, Italy, Portugal, Norway, Spain, and the United Kingdom have committed to transform Mercator Ocean International into an intergovernmental organization. And Mercator Ocean is now involved alongside with the French ambassador in the preparation of the 3rd UN Ocean Decade, which will take place in Nice in 25, and hosted by France and Costa Rica, and during which the transformation of Mercator Ocean International will take place. And we are happy to see that the Minister of Earth Science of India, Mr. Kiel, has endorsed the Paris call for the glaciers and pole launched by President Macron during the One Planet Summit in Paris, proposing to mobilize Indian coastal regions for joining the Ocean Rise and Resilience Coalition that will be a major special event as well of the upcoming United Nations Ocean Conference in 25. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karina. Wonderful, insights on how some of these, individual modeling systems that several of the centers have been running globally. There's such a huge opportunity as part of the DCC Ocean Predict, to bring all of them to a single platform and see whether it can function as a system of systems, delivering products, to the user communities. Thank you very much for the presentation. I would now like to call upon Nadia. Nadia, over to you for your presentation, please, on ocean hazards and coastal resilience.
So we are probably going now with the UN Decade to the last mile, to the users of the coast. Let's see, I went back. Yeah. So we are looking at ocean hazards and their impact on coastal resilience. We are a Decade collaborative center for coastal resilience, and we are bringing together many programs of the UN Decade to face what is the approach that we have to take. I don't need to tell you that, unfortunately, here did not come out, but this is the outcome of a paper that talks about that number, 172 million of people affected by ocean hazards in the past, from 1900 to 2015, 121 extreme events occurring. The last one, I don't remember, maybe is loss of lives. So we know what is happening. This is another nice paper that documents the increase of 100-year extreme events to shorter time scales, which everybody recommend to look at. It's a very nice analysis. So the red one, which is also missing here, is 1 year. So many 100-year extreme events, sea level extreme events, are going to have a frequencies of 1 to 10 years. Okay, So how do we prepare? And this is the last mile I was talking about. We have operational oceanography. We have digital twins that are coming to help us. In general, how do we prepare? So we have a challenge 6 in the ocean decade that is called Increased Community Resilience to Ocean Hazards. And that means that we have to get together with coastal stakeholders, and we have to set up the system in order to have non-conventional data sets to be exchanged. So we are in our way to define coastal resilience and the needs for coastal resilience. The goal is to reach that safe ocean against ocean hazards, and we are going to document the observation and modeling needs for an outcome that designs people-centered multi-hazards. And you wouldn't believe it, but we do not have a multi-hazard early warning systems. And then the second outcome is adaptation planning strategies for coastal resilience, which involves a downscaling of climate scenarios with standards and best practices. So the new concept is we need to think multi-hazard because there are concatenated effects and because it's very expensive, and so you need to be ready to be multi-hazard. Okay, so let's see if I can, yeah. So then we have all these hazards. We have geophysical, geological related hazard. We have biological, ocean, weather, hydrology, and climate hazards. And we have ecological and local anthropogenic. So we have data that never have been exchanged, observations, and we have models that have never been constructed. Maybe we will bypass numerical models, we go to AI, but we need to go there where nobody has gone before in the UN decade. So we need risk science to go into oceanography much more than it has gone in the past. So we need to have risk assessment, the 3 steps, risk reduction, and governmental, institution, and social changes to support that risk science that we need to set. And we need to know our users and stakeholders. But in the past years, due to operational oceanography, we have started to see our upstream stakeholders, observational and satellite, in situ and satellite. We have intermediate stakeholders that are from private companies to national weather services. And then we have downstream stakeholders. So we need to divide them because their needs are different. And we need to classify them for risk science to emerge. So in conclusion, we have the Sendai framework, which has already stated the need, but this is just a framework. We need more specific guiding principles for coastal resilience. The ocean decade is the opportunity to define them. And I'd like to acknowledge the work that I do together with Dr. Kumar and a wealth of other experts on which we are defining the principles. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nadia, for the excellent presentation and then showing the direction that we are taking as part of the DCC Coastal Resilience on actually enhancing the coastal resilience under the decade. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'd like to now invite Professor Jose Guerrero for his talk. Over to you, Professor.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be a partner of the Ocean Pavilion. My compliments to the distinguished colleagues of the panel. It's also a pleasure to be with you. Well, my task is very easy, since the colleague already facilitated my work. The question is, nowadays, what is the role of a public institution to support public policies, public awareness, to protect the civil society together with the authorities for assessment of the risks related to the climate change, extreme events, and also the responsibility of a country which has one of the largest EEZs, not only in Europe, but also in the world. The question is, what do we do? This is the picture that we all know. We are unbalanced. That is a fact. But the first part of this presentation is dedicated to public awareness, particularly in Portugal, and also for your information, what's going on. And what's going on must be based on sound scientific data. Which data do we have? Well, you know, Portugal, as I told you, is one of the largest EEZ in the world. Together with the extension of the continental shelf, it will be the largest, the second largest in Europe. And don't forget, with a middle point in the Atlantic because of the islands of Azores and Madeira, which will become quite important on this presentation. Is it true the climate is changing in Portugal? This is the most frequent question that we are asked. So provide simple answers. Quite easy. Yes. This is the data from 70 years. And the data does not lie. We have a rise in the middle temperature of 0.3 degrees Celsius in the last decades and 0.4 on the maximum average temperature. We had something like the most frequent heat waves on the last 10 years. We have the most severe droughts in the last 10 years, 6 of them in the last 10 years. We have the most extreme temperatures and also the higher number of tropical nights in the last 10 years. We have severe droughts and, of course, that provoked the most severe wildfires that we had in Portugal. These are the data people understand because they are factual and they can feel it. I can say that now one of the dams in Portugal, it's with a level of 7.4% only. There is no water in the south of Portugal. This is the facts people understand. And it's for public institutions to provide these facts. And based on that, what can we do? We can advise public authorities, particularly to tell them what is happening and based on that, to develop the public policies and also to support the political decision. For instance, what we do as a reference in the research laboratory. Yes, we have now a new network of automatic meteorological stations and new radars, particularly on the middle of the Atlantic. We are now just finishing 2 new radars in Azores. In the last 10 years, we have invested something like more than 20 million euros in new equipment. But also, we provide several data based on ocean monitoring, not only on the what we call, as you know, in Europe, the good environmental status of the ocean, but also on the populations, particularly those populations not only for fishing, but also for public wealth, because it's a question of public health to monitor those populations. But also, we have developed a system, some of you already use it, which is to use commercial vessels, fishery vessels, just to pick up information like temperature, salinity, chlorophyll, and so on, using and all the fishing vessel fleet to acquire that information. Not only our research vessels, and probably you don't know, but Portugal is also, by this time, one center for tsunami forecasting. we have developed this information because I don't know if you know, but we are one of the hotspots that probably can be hit by tsunamis. We had one big historical tsunami back in the 18th century, and this is one of the probabilities. But also, picking up the Azores, as it is a good example, it's in the middle of the ocean, midway for the United States. They are victims of climate change. They are almost carbon neutral as an island. Actually, it's 9 islands. It's an archipelago of 9 islands. And precisely because they are in the middle of Atlantic, we could say, okay, no effects on climate change. Wrong. Very wrong. Actually, if you see the data on top, this is the number of cyclones, hurricanes that are evolving nearby Azores. And if you see the evolution of the data, you can see that in the last decade, it came from 20 passing nearby the islands to 35 events, category 3 or plus. That is the data. Moreover, mean temperature, annual mean temperature rise something like 0.7 degrees. Annual maximum temperature, 0.5 degrees, and so on and so on. These are the data in the middle of the Atlantic, Azores. Okay, if we have this data, what we do with that? We are developing a database that will be available to international community, not only national community, gathering all the data that we have, ancient data since the last 70 years from meteorological observation, but also the data which are being collected in the ocean. It's very important that database is available and it's possible to share with the scientific community. But also, I do thank you for listening to me. And again, we are developing a climatic observatory in the middle of the Atlantic precisely to monitor the green gas in the middle of the Atlantic, middle way to the United States, but also with our partners from the Portuguese-speaking countries. Don't forget that this is the transition from the Atlantic North to the South Atlantic. And then together with Cape Verde, Guinea, and Angola, and São Tomé and Príncipe, we are developing a network that can help precisely to evaluate what's happening in this area of the Atlantic. Thank you very much. I'll be at your disposal.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Jose, for explaining the initiatives of Portugal in terms of observations and the climate and the policy kind of things that you do. I'd like to now invite Abhishek Chatterjee to actually present on the ocean observations information services from INCOIS.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Ocean Pavilion for giving me an opportunity. So I'll be giving this presentation on behalf of Dr. M. Ravichandran, who is the Secretary to Ministry of Earth Science. Yeah, so before we already have listened to our panelists about the role of ocean and the pivotal role of ocean is playing, not only modulating the climate, but also affecting our day-to-day life. And this is because the acceleration in ocean economic activities, it can be any field like ocean aquaculture, deep hydrothermals, and submarine cables, offshore wind farmings, and so on. So in every aspect in the ocean, economic activities are actually kind of rapidly increasing over the last few decades. And this leading to the overexploitation. We all know, we all kind of very much aware of it. And this leading to the challenges or the stresses that our marine ecosystem is facing on a daily basis, leading to loss of habitat and biodiversity. We are now facing more and more harmful algal blooms. Our dead zones are expanding. Okay, it's the coastal regions are getting affected on a daily basis, and the coastal and marine pollutions, which we are now becoming a very big challenge we are facing in these days. Not only that, The climate change is also there, like sea level rise, we already know about it, and the extreme events which are being become more frequent on this. So now this makes us this makes us to believe that the blue economy, which is an alternative to the existing brown economy model, basically it allows simultaneous accomplishment of climate sustainability and as well as the economic growth targets. But the thing is that the blue economy is not there is no uniform definition of the blue economy. So it depends upon of the national interest and their objective and the capabilities and the funding that is available. So it depends upon the nation to nation, region to region. Now, for example, if you look at the World Bank Group, the definition of the blue economy is slightly different than the island state like Seychelles. So where the adaptations for the climate change is more important than the other aspects. Because of considering this, the importance, the varies important from one region to other region. Under the India's presidency during the G20, the G20 actually proposed to follow a certain high-level principles which will be inclusive for any blue economy initiatives. So these high-level principles are mainly prioritizing 9 pillars, and for example, the first pillar talks about ocean health, is basically addressing the pollution, the ocean pollution, coastal pollutions, the plastic, microplastic pollutions, and then how we can actually deal with these pollutions. For example, the invasion of the alien species and so on. So there needs to be an approach in order to address these pollutions or the ocean health in particular. And then we can talk about how the ocean and the climate are kind of linked. So any blue economy initiative that we are taking, it has to be nature-based. It should not lead to something else which will have an effect in future as well. So this ocean and climate nexus has to be taken into account. And then we also should talk about the social and intergenerational equity and the gender equality, so that the approaches that we are taking, it has to be transparent and inclusive, so that the new generation and for example the empowerment of women and so on, they have to be part of this development, so that they can take part of this, and then we can actually come out with a solution which will be more inclusive, taking care of everybody into this stakeholding activity. And then, of course, this has to be done through the science, leveraging science, and the developing new technologies which will help in mitigating these policies. For example, we need to find out the improved nature-based solutions in order to address this thing. And then, for example, it has to be done by strengthening international collaboration. For example, what is happening in a coast of India, for example, and the applications of a blue economy initiative can have an impact in other regions. So it has, because oceans are connected everywhere. So we need to have more international collaboration in order to address this issue. And finally, the most important thing is the ocean finance, because any blue economy initiatives has to bear with the cost. So it has to be taken into account that how finance can actually help in building the blue economy or the ocean-based solutions, particularly for the developing and underdeveloped countries. So, but then how this actually happens? So this, as Martin already talked about, that this has to be done through a proper information. So any implementation of blue economy has to go through, has to be backed by the proper information, and the information comes from the data, from the observations, from the data, and then you model it and then forecast and provide the services. So these are all interlinked in order to bring in order to actually build a proper blue economy or the ocean-based solutions in order to address these issues. So I'll just take this opportunity to give some of the examples that our institute inquires, which is Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, is actually a part of actually addressing all these aspects of the information which are helping in order to build or developing a blue initiatives. So as it is written here, the mission of INCOIS is to provide ocean information and advisory services to society, industry, government agencies, and scientific community to sustain ocean observations and constant improvement through systematic and focused research. So basically, we are into the observations. We are managing the data, finding the information, modeling it, and then providing the services, which actually allowing a better planning for these blue initiatives. So when it comes to the observations, this is the right-hand side. You're seeing a map of the observations that currently exist in the Indian Ocean, and a major portion of this observation network is contributed by INCOIS, be it the Argo, International Argo Program, XBT lines, Rama moorings, which are sustained in the Indian Ocean. So INCOIS is a part of that and giving its all support. And recently, we have actually started a program called Deep Ocean Mission, under which we are running glider transects in the Bay of Bengal as well as in the Arabian Sea for continuous monitoring of the open and high seas. Then come data management. This data is actually managed through Indian Ocean Data Center, which is based at INCOIS, and then this data is actually going into the model for generating the services. Some of the services that we are generating here, ecosystem services, talking about marine fishery advisories, coral bleaching, water quality services, and so on. And then the safety services, which are basically search and rescue operations, oil spill services, and so on. So, and then the climate services. So, and then the multi-hazard early warning system, which includes the tsunami and the coastal flooding and so on. And this is happening not only in INCOIS, but we are also providing teaching. We are providing training to international students in the IOVA region through our ITCU training program, which is IOC UNESCO Category 2 Center. And these services are providing a lot of, not generating a lot of economic activity. For example, this is actually giving, for example, the oil spill is actually generating about $12.25 million in 2015 itself. And so on. So these are the international collaboration that INCOIS is already a part of, hosting the chair and co-chair of IOC, and so on. And that's all. Thank you. So we are basically, our initiatives are actually giving the inputs to the SDG outcomes, which actually talks about predictive, safe, and healthy oceans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek, for giving an example of what INCOIS does on, in operational oceanography. So let us give a big hand to all the speakers, and then we will actually, see if we have any questions from the audience. So yeah, the floor is open to the audience for any questions to any of the speakers. Okay, I can start off. Actually, I'll probably I have something to ask Nadia. Nadia, you actually explained how the Decade Collaborative Center of Coastal Resilience is actually talking about enhancing coastal resilience. Now, if you look at some of the hazards, as we actually, when we talk about hazard, what immediately strikes to our mind is the big things like the Indian Ocean tsunami. It has killed 230,000 people, or the big, cyclones or the typhoons, which have taken a lot of lives. But then the way that actually, that what impacts us, the coastal communities every day in and day out. They are not these large things which happen far and wide apart. But then those everyday things like, you could have swell waves or the, strong coastal currents that can impact, the coastal habitations, the businesses, and, much more often. So you actually mentioned about multi-hazard, you're taking a multi-hazard approach. So how do you think, you are able to bridge these, wide ranges of coastal hazards actually? Yeah.
Okay. I will try to give a short answer, and probably not something that we have been thinking yet too much, but the UN Decade is putting a lot of attention. We think of using a lot of citizen science, coupled with satellite at very high resolution to get enough information for our models to at the coastal in the coastal area to be validated, if not assimilated into the models. But more than that, we think that these events that affect the everyday life of the people now have some answers in AI. So we think of doing new kind of measurements in the coastal area that involve population to a certain degree. I mean, we have to also discuss which population. Yeah. New satellite plus AI.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're very right, actually. You know, some of the, solutions lie in, using some of these newer technologies like deep learning methods, and it's probably not always the dynamical, high resource intensive kind of modeling that you need to run. That'll actually bring me to, Karina, actually. So, you're actually doing a lot of, the forecasting. You run models at different spatial scales and then the temporal scales to give out actually warnings to, to different stakeholders. So what is the direction that we need to take, going forward? Like Nadia was mentioning about a kind of a mix of dynamical forecasting methods and AI methods. So your take or comments on these things, how you're, seeing this going ahead?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. So there are different aspects of needed evolution. So first is also the inclusion of new components of the ocean observing system, such as I earlier mentioned, like biogeochemistry, but also for being more capable in including other green for the biodiversity aspects, and in order to advance also then that you get a kind of three triangle, like not only the physics, but also the biogeochemistry and the biodiversity aspects better in these forecasting system, real-life system, and then on the forecasting systems to get a more comprehensive, let's say, prediction of the ocean. Then there is a need, as I mentioned, also to further continue also on the validation aspect, but also on the evolution, just like the resolution increase. And then there is also a lot of need in terms of downscaling activities, but I think the most important is this initiative also on the Decadal Center, that is to build a global community to work together in order to move ahead for a comprehensive and a worldwide, let's say, functioning service and prediction to support adaptation, to support loss and damage, to support also the early warning aspects and so on. The services the society needs now in the changing environment.
Right. Thanks, Karina. So I have yes, please go ahead. Yeah, no. I'll follow up later. Let's go ahead, please. Yes.
So this is for the gentleman from Portugal, and it's probably unfair because it's something I've been thinking of a lot in terms of things like MCDR, and that is, north of the Azores is one of the greatest natural laboratories for air-sea gas exchange that you can find globally because of the phytoplankton bloom that reliably occurs every spring. The problem with trying to measure directly the exchange of CO2 from the atmosphere to the ocean is that we have a very small signal-to-noise ratio. And so most sensors cannot resolve that exchange. North of the Azores, though, that region with a large delta PCO2 and very strong winds quite often provides just a tremendous natural laboratory. Is there any talk about not just Portugal, but global collaborators, about taking advantage of that location to do these sorts of studies? You may never have thought of it. I thought of it a lot. So.
Thank you for your question. That's precisely because we thought of it that I started. I took charge last 1st of June, and one of the first initiatives that we provide together with the government of Azores was to develop a climatic observatory system in the Azores. That's why we are developing not only our capacity, satellite capacity, together with EUMETSAT, Copernicus, but also in cooperation with the United States, particularly with NOAA, but developing based on the new radars. They will enter operating next January, I hope, if the weather allows. I don't control the weather, I just say the weather. But nevertheless, we are developing, which is an investment about 6 million euros, new devices and new capacities just to monitor the green gas in that spot. And the intention is precisely to provide an international spot to follow up in the middle of Atlantic using that particular geographical location and wind regime and also the current regimes in that spot. Because also, I didn't mention, because I had no time, but we are also developing smart cables. We are renewing our network of our triangle of smart cables between the Azores, Madeira and continent, and we are developing those smart cables which will monitor the bottom of the ocean, not only for seismology and tsunami alert, but also gathering some information on acidification, temperature of the water, and so the intention is to have this hotspot for climate change in the middle of the Atlantic already next year, and obviously open to all of you. That's our intention. We have announced that with the government as a first source last month, precisely.
Yeah. Thank you. So any more questions from the audience before I go to Martin? Okay, so Martin, so we've heard from Karina and Nadia on how the forecasting systems are very important from open ocean to coastal areas. So you have done a lot of work on observations, of course, and data. How how sufficient do you think are our observations in the coastal areas? Even in the earlier panel, we've heard things talked about the open ocean, BioGeo-Argo, Deep Argo, and so on. What is your take on the coastal observations? Because this is when all that modeling has to be useful for the coastal population. That's where we need observations. So your comments.
Right, Kumar. Thank you for that question. It's a very simple answer. When you draw a map of the ocean and you make each float big enough, right, the pixel, it looks wonderful, right? It looks like the whole ocean is covered. But if you actually zoom in, right, and then you look what is actually there at the scale where decisions get made, where the blue economy is happening, you'll be very surprised how little observations we actually have. Right. That is a real challenge. And I think that's why all of us, we're exploring all the opportunities we have to enhance the database. Yeah. Now, I will say, we heard the mentioning of remote sensing. For example, there's swath altimetry just becoming online, the data available as of yesterday. So that's really exciting for one parameter of it. Yeah. We see a lot of small sats and CubeSats coming online that can help you for a local region that give photometric images, sometimes SST, lower quality than the big birds, but still useful for some of the coastal arenas. Right. And we also see an increasing number of blue economy actors, shall we say, who also, as they're building out in the regions, I talked about wind farms and so on, that are sometimes, if you get lucky, mandated by the government to also take observation at these sites. So we're not in the place where we have enough observation to really know what goes on, but we have a rapid opportunity to get closer to that. Right. And let me say a few more words. We're here at a session talking about the blue economy. Yeah. And I've been at a meeting for investors, people who actually invest money to make money, right? And if you look at these investors and ask the question, how much is there in the blue space? It's 3%. It's tiny, right? So, and the question is, why is it? Why are people not investing in wind farms, in mariculture, in sustainable tourism, protected areas, and so on? And the answer is very simple. Too risky. Too risky. So when I talk to them, I say, we are here in the business of de-risking blue investment. Because if you do green investment, the government does that for you. They tell you, okay, here's the infrastructure, here's the power cable, internet for free, this is the bus line where the workers can come in. The companies don't pay for that. The government pays for that. They make it possible to do investments at low risk. And then they give you even a loan. They say, if your company doesn't quite work out, I'll take half the risk, right? So there's massive de-risking happening on land. very little de-risking happening in the ocean space. And I do think ocean observations, ocean information systems, digital twin forecasting are all the elements that you need to de-risk ocean investment. So people who don't care about the ocean but want to maximize the capital investment invest in that space to do the sustainable developments that we're talking about here in this particular pavilion, but also at COP. The other arena that you hear a lot of talk about the ocean at COP, it's all about capture of carbon, right? I mean, half of the presentations are here about what the ocean can all do to take up the CO2 from the atmosphere so we can keep driving cars and whatnot, right? Now, again, it's a very risky business. We don't have the observations to verify what people say. There's a lot of people out there who have great ideas, maybe, but unless you verify them, you can't say it's a good idea. So again, you need the observing system behind it, you need twinning behind it, you need verification behind it, but that is not where the investment market is here at COP. They're all about gang-ho, about doing some stuff, you know that, pretty crazy, right? So I do think there's an actually, I think actually there's not an opportunity, but I think there's a demand almost for our governments to put order into this business, right? They would never allow that to happen on land at that scale, but somehow the ocean is too big to fail, doesn't care, don't know. So I think we should be raising our voice here and say, if you want sustainable blue carbon capture systems, you got to have an observer system around it. You have to have the simulation system around it. You de-risk your investment. And I think this is something that we all collectively talk about, but we use different words. And I'm encouraging us to use these words so we get more resonance with people out there negotiating at COP the carbon or the energy transition. I think the ocean has something to offer, but we're still approaching it a bit too scientific. And we don't use the language of investment, of the blue economy, but I think we could.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks very much, Martin. You make very important points. And then, interestingly, I'm looking at the last slide which Abhishek made, where he has put something in red. Better observations, models, services, impact-based forecasts that address user needs. That's what is required. Users, I'm sure he meant the entire blue economy landscape, actually. Okay, I'll go back to Abhishek. I think we have a couple of minutes more. So Abhishek, in your presentation, you mentioned about, the climate products that you generate. We all understand, about, day-to-day products, nowcasts, and then short-term forecasts that are very important for several stakeholders. But then you talk on climate scales. Like, for example, Indian Ocean warming and then sea level rising by, say, 3 millimeters a year. What does it mean to somebody in the coastal area, right? So you need certain work to be done, to downscale those broad brush kind of forecasts to have some coastal, meaning to those. So are there any works that you're doing on those lines when you spoke about climate forecasts?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Yeah, so as you mentioned, that the 3 millimeter per year doesn't make any sense probably to a coastal population or the person who is living in the coast. For him that, okay, how much he going to be or he or she going to be impacted by the sea level rise, for example. It may not be 3 millimeter. So yeah, so we need a coastal downscaling for all these projections that we are talking about. And we have been working on this coastal downscaling for the Indian coast. We're using a suite of models, high-resolution models, which are taking from the CMIP6 models and then the downscale to coastal regions. So that is where we are trying to go. And obviously, this has to be backed by the data and how best it actually produces those projections. So this is where we are trying to work on using models as well as using observation systems. And we have been building this under a program called Deep Ocean Mission, wherein we are also doing a lot of observations to actually monitor the changes or the climate sensitive variables, how it's going to change, and whether we are actually modeling it properly. So we are working on that to get a downscaling.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abhishek. I think with that, I think we have a couple of minutes left. So if there is no pressing question from the audience, I'll try to, close this panel. So I think the key message is blue economy is something that's happening. Climate change is something that's happening. That's why we are all here discussing. And oceans have a big role, to play. The ocean climate nexus is something that we are all worried about, how they, impact each other, and then, how do we find solutions to climate change and so on and so forth. But at the same time, countries are working, several countries, including India, say, for example, and several other countries are working on their blue economies because we are moving increasingly towards the oceans. and then that's actually causing a huge pressure on the oceans. And so when we talk about this blue economy, like all the panelists have very rightly, mentioned in the presentations, so you need to actually, the data, data is very important actually for any decision that we need on the oceans. So we need a lot more observations. We need a lot more capacities to model the oceans, the forecast the oceans, predict the oceans, and then also make our, kind of services that are very societally relevant. I think in terms of oceanography, we have moved from a space where we were doing oceanography for research. I think we have passed that, and then we are getting into a space where we are becoming much more mature in terms of observations, and then our models, our computing systems, and then I think now we actually need to give that big the operational oceanography is something that is we all need to focus on, make sure that the observations that we are putting there, the value, somebody is going to ask, the policy maker is going to ask me, okay, if you're putting an Argo float there, what is the value I'm getting out of it? I think that link, that end-to-end value chain to the blue economy stakeholders is something that we all have to work together. And then with this, I'd like to close this panel. And then I'd like to thank, the Woodzole and the Ocean Partners for giving us this opportunity, and all the speakers for being here, and the audience, and then our technical support from this wonderful team. Thank you very much.